comes for Brooks. They're set again. It'll drift out to Marshall. He keeps it going along. Masters, what a pass that time! There's nothing hospital about that. That's a perler. On to Norfoluma to score in the corner.
Going back the other way to Taylor. To Lolohea. Bounces off Cheekham. It's playing on. Thompson! He's in! I think he got it down. Corey Thompson, who's been magnificent for the West Tigers. Strikes it. It looks good. He's kicked it. He's kicked it, and the West Tigers go to 10-8 with a minute 30 to go.
The West Tigers podcast for episode number 292. It's been a little while. We're suffering a few technical gremlins as well as we get back into the swing of it. I had to think about how to do this. It's been that long. But anyway, we're here now and there's plenty to talk about. Starting off, we'll keep with tradition, one word. We've got Gary and Declan and Steve here. One word to describe. Well, it could be to describe the off-season. It could be to describe the West Tigers podcast being a little bit on spring break. Whatever it might be. What's your one word, Gary?
My one word is NFL. I guess it's 3 letters, not really a word, but my one word is NFL. If it wasn't for the NFL, I'd be going stir crazy at the moment. I need a little bit of sport at this time of year. I need a team to engage with, and I engage with Cincinnati in the NFL, and that's what's getting me through this off-season at the moment, despite them losing on Monday morning.
Are they otherwise a good team, or have you got another struggler?
They were a struggler for quite a while, but then, as the NFL you can do in the draft, they picked up a gun quarterback, and that's turned them around, and they were playing in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. They lost a couple of games to start the season, and then once their quarterback got over a calf injury, they're pretty much flying now. It's the first game they've lost in a little while, so they'll be there at the end of the season.
His last name's not Caesar, is it, by any chance?
No, it's not Caesar.
Luai.
I'm sure we'll get on to talking about Jerome Luai at some point on this podcast. Steve, you've chimed in. That was one word. That's not your official one word, I'm sure.
It's his one word for the whole pod.
No, before I get to my one word, it could be outright boredom through having to listen to Gary and Eddie carry on the group chat about NFL. It's the most boring sport that's ever been invented, I reckon. But anyway, my one word is desperation. It's still, because even though we've had a bit of a break, I am still desperate for change to happen at West Tigers, because I honestly don't know how I'm going to pick up my enthusiasm to support this team that I've loved my whole life if there's not massive change at the top. So desperation. I'm desperate for seeing something out of this review.
I thought for a minute, Steve, you were going to say, I'm desperate to see the West Tigers get back into action. Yeah. then it changed just there.
That's part two of the plan.
You're a strange man, Gary. Declan,
I can't wait. I wish I was playing next weekend.
Gary loves punishment. That's why he's a sucker for it.
What's your word for us, Declan? One word.
My one word is boredom. I think that at the internationals, I don't think they were great in terms of quality, but I think it was something to kind of, fix the need for some rugby league. And now that that's gone, I just find myself so bored, and I'm actually contemplating watching the cricket, and that kind of just shows you how desperate I am for something. So apparently there's some sort of World Cup going on at the moment. I know that Steve said that it's annoying when Eddie and Gary talk about NFL, but when Steve and Eddie talk about cricket, I think that's 10 times worth in the group chat, to be honest.
I like cricket, but their chat about it is just, dull.
It's just way above your technical level, fellas. But we understand that. And if you can keep up, fantastic. But I understand if you can't.
A game for gentlemen, not for rogues like Gary and Declan. I'm in the same camp, but there is, as I've said before on the pod, really there's no other sport but NRL. I just can't get involved anywhere else. My one word to describe the off-season so far is absent. And I think this relates to our friend Eddie Otto, who has been serially absent in recent times and seems to be on some sort of campaign to not be on the West Tigers podcast until the new year, Declan.
Yeah, I think he's still celebrating Penrith's win in the grand final because you just see some photos of him on social media and he hasn't really stopped celebrating. So, there might be something to that.
I think he's mourning the loss of Dame Laurie too. I think that might be. It's going to take him a while to get over that.
I think he said would see him sometime in February, but that date seems to keep pushing. It may be February 2025 that he comes back.
It could be. It feels a little bit like that. Okay, let's get down to business. The review is the issue that seems to be bubbling back up to the surface. We, of course, had some sort of vague references to when we might expect the review to come out. We're now at about that time on the calendar. So, Gary, is there anything that we should be, at the moment, it's just a matter of waiting and seeing what happens. There's been some reports, boardroom meetings and things like that, but at this stage, we don't know anything concrete.
What's really different about this process compared to most? It's just quiet. There's not a lot of news coming out of anywhere. The board meeting went ahead on Monday night. It was held, and it's so un-West Tigers-like that there'd be a board meeting held, and the next day there isn't multiple stories floating around about what's happening. I think at the moment, fans and us and everyone just needs to have a little bit more patience. I expect we'll hear something in the next 2-3 weeks at the most about what happened, whether there's going to be any changes, what changes might occur. I think we're getting close to hearing something. It would be nice if it was this week, but I expect it in the next couple of weeks that we should hear something. And I just suggest everyone be a little bit more patient. And if we don't hear something in that kind of time frame, then we'll start asking some questions again.
Yeah, we will ask those questions if we don't hear anything, for sure. Steve, we have spoken about this before on the pod, where the process, I think, is healthy if it goes for a certain amount of time. But if it goes on too long, it can become too disruptive. We know it was disruptive, but we're back in pre-season training. I mean, the time, the clock is ticking. I think there needs to be something come out relatively soon.
Yeah, I think if there's going to be significant change, and significant change can be one person if that one person holds a lot of authority and power within the organisation, So if there's going to be significant change for the good of the football team and the football department, that needs to happen sooner rather than later so that people, so that the football group can just focus on footy and not when they get to press conferences and media, the media activity that they do, they don't get asked all these questions about what's happening up in the boardroom above them, So, yeah, the sooner the better. But just to add to what Gary said, it's amazingly quiet because I've made only a couple of emails to people that are closer to the review than I am and got absolutely nothing but polite responses. So they're keeping it very tight, which is good, right? That's really professional in the way it should be.
Declan, you and I are normally the most optimistic people. We never go negative, or we never become pessimistic about the club at all, or any of the players. We've got a strong track record of that. I think you'll agree. We're usually the shining lights of optimism. I would suggest that further to Gary's point, where isn't it amazing how everything's so quiet? My feeling is that this is the calm before the storm. If I know this organisation at all, it's going to end up being a powder keg, I think.
I think so. I think you kind of got to look into how potentially toxic the whole thing was when they accused Lee of announcing that he was going to be chairman for the next 3 years, and then someone saying that he was only reappointed as a board member, and then that got kind of ugly. And then for some reason, the whole thing, as you guys have said, has kind of went quiet. So yeah, I think that this club is never too far away from a a drama. So I wouldn't be too surprised if you were right, Joel. And like, it just kind of takes one thing to set the whole thing in motion. But hopefully that's not true. I'm just wondering, like, have you guys heard anything about like how, or even if, the information from the review is going to be released? Because I don't really know, to my knowledge, if they've stated that publicly.
There's been no statement about how that information will be presented to fans. I know that the review team has presented to the Holman Barnes Group. That has happened. I think there was then a commitment to present to Balmain and to the Western Suburbs Football Club. I also heard that there was talk about them trying to re-engage with Campbelltown Sports Club, so West Campbelltown down in Campbelltown, and seeing if there could be a re-engagement there. So I think there was a possibility that they were going to be presented to as well. And what I think part of and this is only from little bits and pieces that were in the media, I think there was some kind of presentation about what was presented to the West Ashfield and to the independent board members at the West Tigers board meeting on Monday night. So I think they got those independent directors got a clearer understanding of what the process was and what the recommendations were. And though while I don't think West Tigers board should have a lot of say in what recommendations are taken up, especially if they're organisational and structural at a board level, I do think it is important to let those independent directors know what's going on in what has been, it was a quite public kind of review process early on, and it's gone quiet now. But yeah, there hasn't been any commitment to even releasing the information publicly, and the Holman Barnes Group is not really under any commitment or any obligation to release the findings. I think they should, because they announced they were publicly doing a review. They mentioned it at things like the grand final luncheon, and the fact that they were using this to kind of build support back up for the club, and it was a positive thing they were doing. I think that means there does need to be some kind of public response, but they're under no obligation to do so. But what I would like to see, and sorry for speaking so long, I'm sure Steve's enjoying it, but what I would like to see is at least the recommendations that were made to them becoming public. I don't think the whole review is ever going to become public, but the recommendations that were presented to the Holman Barnes Group, I think that would be beneficial for the fans and sponsors and anyone involved in the club from an outside point of view, kind of hearing what those recommendations were and whether the club's going to take them up or not.
It's probably worth reminding everyone too that when we started this process, we were given a guarantee, and I don't think that's too strong a word. We were given a guarantee that once the recommendations were handed down and once there was a decision as to what would be done with those recommendations, that we'd be involved in another meeting like we had to kick this whole thing off. Now, what that means, I don't know, but that guarantee has been put out there. So there'll be at least some communication fed out to us. But yeah, hopefully they're planning to do a lot more than just tell us.
Yeah, and I think that's the key point. Us having a meeting with the club and us finding out kind of what happened, I think it needs to be bigger than that. The club announced this publicly, and yes, we kind of engaged with the club and we set up a petition to get it started. I think it needs to go further than just us hearing about it. I want everyone to actually hear a fair chunk of what was found and what was recommended. Because it's quite possible, Steve, for them to turn around and tell you or Joel or me, Declan, Eddie some stuff, but say, oh, you can't tell that to anyone else. And I think it's really important that some information from this process and some valuable information and some critical information and some recommendations actually become public, and we find out what the review team what direction the review team thought the club should be going.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see, and hopefully not too long before something does come out in regards to that. Just in regards to Campbelltown, I noticed on the socials that the West Tigers is holding a business building event in Campbelltown tonight. So, maybe that's a little step that we're trying to make some more inroads back in that important market. And, of course, we've got the 2 home ground strategy next year, which is more Campbelltown and Leichhardt focused. We'll have a look at the draw shortly. Let's have a look at the other big thing that's happened in the last few weeks, and that is West Tigers have got a new coach. It's not the first time this has happened in recent years, but Benji Marshall has officially taken the clipboard. He's taken over as coach. If you watched his press conference, I think you can definitely see that he's going to be taking a little bit of the different coaches that he's had. I think he's going to be trying to emulate Wayne Bennett a fair bit, but I think he sees himself as being more of a man manager, someone who builds those relationships with the players and lets them play their natural game, but continues to build an environment where everybody's happy. Declan, I'll throw to you. I don't mind that concept, but it worked well for Brisbane when they had the whole list of superstars that they had. But I mean, is this a kind of squad that you can kind of be a little bit hands-off as a head coach, or do you think that's the right approach?
That's a good question. I think for such a young team, I do think that you kind of need to give them that football education in terms of, especially in the preseason, you really do need to kind of build them up to what they're going to need to be able to handle in first grade. And this is a really young squad, so I don't think the sense that just kind of let them be kind of that kind of mentality is probably the right way to go. I do think that someone like Benji, I think he's obviously was a very successful half back in his day, and with that comes a great kind of skill set and knowledge about kind of where everyone should be in attack. I think that's hopefully something he can give to the younger players. And then you've also got Chris Hyington, who was a veteran forward in the coaching staff, Robbie Farah and John Morris. So yeah, I'm hoping that this is very educational for the young players, especially. I do think it's very interesting that especially when you listen to someone like Api Coruscant, he said the difference between Tim Sheens and Benji Marshall is that Tim Sheens very, very obviously attack orientated, that 200 passes a game thing. But he said that Benji Marshall is actually a bit more structured and a bit more pressure building in terms of just completing sets, play for the first 20 minutes, and then let the opposition make another mistake and then pounce on it. So I find that very interesting, the differences between the two, and I'm very keen to see what that looks like in round one. And I'm hoping that, because apparently it sounds like that it's going to be a harder preseason than last year in terms of fitness and emphasis on defence. So I'm very keen to see what that looks like going into the trials.
Yeah, my key takeaway from that interview wasn't so much about him being hands-on and letting the players kind of, and just managing the players and the players kind of develop. But to me, it sounded like he was more speaking about being hands-off and his assistants having a much larger role. That John Morris would be looking after the defence, and Robbie Farah was going to be focusing on the attack, and that was going to be their area, and they would have ownership, and he'd be empowering them to have ownership over those areas. So while I think that he's probably not going to be his fingers all over everything, I think he's empowering his assistants to do that. And when you have a look at some sports around the world, and I'll mention it again just to annoy Steve, the NFL, that's kind of how that system operates, where your head coach sits over the top of people who are running those areas of the team for you. And to me, that's what Benji's interview sounded like he was looking at doing, that he was going to be focusing on that culture and that man management side of it, but he was empowering his assistants to look at the other areas. And what I think is really important as a coach is to know where your areas of weaknesses are. And if he knows where his strengths and weaknesses are, and he's able to bring in people to support those weaknesses so he can focus on his strengths, then I think that's a real positive. Now, what we'll see over the next 12 to 18 months is whether he's able to implement that, and that's the key point.
Steve, there's We've spoken about different coaching styles, and we don't know exactly how that is going to work. We don't know what next year is going to look like. I can see an argument to say that with the young players of today, they may be disconnected from a Tim Sheens, who was one of the most senior coaches in the game. Now, all of a sudden, we've got a coaching team, all four of them, Morris, Farah, Heinington, Marshall, they're all around 40. I mean, it's an unknown quantity as to whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. You could make an argument to say, well, they'll be more connected with the younger players, but maybe they won't be as respected as a four-time premiership winner with a few more grey hairs. What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's something to that. In a way, Benji's actually starting with the ideal scenario. And even though we haven't got a State of Origin Australia rep player laden squad, we've got a squad of young blokes who potentially will look up to him and Heinington and Farah in particular, and Morris has been there, done that, and potentially will look up to them and lap up what they say and listen to them and learn from them, and therefore the potential is there for that coaching team to mould this side exactly how they want to. And they, if you had half a dozen stars in the side, they mightn't be able to do that. Now, I'm not going to knock back half a dozen stars, right, if they were available, of course. But for a young coach and a young coaching team to have a bunch of young players that will potentially listen and learn from them and make that a little bit easier for them is maybe not a bad thing. But can I add a couple of things I loved about what I heard Benji say, and again, it's all talk at the moment, but I loved a discussion around honesty, and he just believes in pure honesty, and you've just got to deliver a message honestly to people. If they're not playing well, you got to say it. If they are playing well, you got to say it. And I really like that. And it depends how you deliver it, but I liked it. And I also liked what he said about, there's no one's picked yet. And if you train hard in the off season and the pre-season and you have a real go, then you'll be in line, in consideration for top 17. And I thought those 2 points were really good.
Yeah, I think that from what Benji Marshall has said in the media the last in the off season, and also when he kind of took over from Sheens in the last few weeks of the season, he does seem like an incredibly gifted speaker. And I really hope that shines through the players, because when I hear him speak, I just reckon I would so much rather be coached by someone like him compared to someone like Michael Maguire, who's like that guy who's just 100% always on footy, never really an off button. But Benji Marshall, he seems to be someone that can kind of distinguish between footy and having that kind of work-life balance. And yes, obviously, if we lose 5 in a row, I think stuff like that might be a little bit annoying for fans, but I do think players will appreciate the fact that, he cares about them as people, and then there's footy, and I think that will get the best out of particularly the younger players.
Gary, John Morris, he is definitely experienced. He's got head coach experience. He's been in the assistant coach ranks at South and elsewhere. If John Morris wasn't there, I would be a little more concerned. I like what he brings. He's young, but he's got that experience, and working on the defence. I think that could be a good thing for us.
I think he's the key signing to Benji's staff. I think he's the type of person we needed to get across to the club. There was a lot of people when Michael Maguire was sacked who wanted John Morris appointed as the head coach of the West Tigers. Now that we've got him into assistant role, I like what Benji's saying about empowering his assistant coaches, because what I want to see is a really strong partnership between Benji Marshall and John Morris. I want to see them working together and leading this club forward together. Heinington and Farah, I think, are still extremely inexperienced in coaching terms, but John Morris brings across that experience. All the talk about what he did at Cronulla and developing their pathway systems to what they were, and they'll discuss as being some of the best pathway systems in the game. And that's what led to him getting the head coach job at Cronulla. And I thought he was really unlucky. I thought he did a really good job at Cronulla and had them performing quite well. and they went a different direction with going with Fitzgibbon. But I thought he was fairly hard done by in that situation. He's probably the coach over the last few years who I thought was most hard done by when they lost their position. So I'm really glad to see him at the club. I think he's a real positive for that coaching staff. I do wish we had someone else with quite a bit of experience as well, because like John Morris is our most experienced coach, but he's still not having that years of experience. He's still a young guy as well. So I'd like someone else with a fair bit of experience. And there was interesting reports the other day about Wayne Bennett being off contract at the end of, is it the end of this season that he's off contract? Now, if I was the West Tigers, I'd be tapping him on the shoulder when looking at that general manager of football position, because I think the relationship he has with Benji Marshall, and I think he is someone who could go into that sort of role that Benji respects enough to listen to and take advice from. We've already heard the rumblings around Scott Fulton and Benji Marshall not getting on. So I think that's something you have to be very aware of when we're looking at someone going into that general manager role, that it's someone that Benji Marshall can respect and someone who he can take direction and advice from. And I think Wayne Bennett would be the perfect guy to get in to mentor what is a very inexperienced and a very young coaching team.
Yeah, I saw something on the socials this week that Mark O'Neill was the preferred candidate for that position. I don't know how accurate that was. I just do remember reading it. But it's really important that they get that position right, and everyone's making sense, I think, in what they're saying, about the coaching team, because it's not now, right? It's easy to be out there and brave and strong in your words in the pre-season, off-season. It's when we are, if we are 9-4, that their true character is going to be tested, and that's when a Wayne Bennett, as Gary's saying, or someone of the like, would be very beneficial, and where Morris probably would come to the fore with the current people we've got in place.
Yeah, Wayne Bennett's been sort of close a couple of times to coming, so he's certainly never been against coming to the West Tigers by all accounts. So I don't know, we'll have to wait and see. It's a shame that he is based in Brisbane. You'd kind of like your GM of football to be Sydney-based, but I suppose it's not the end of the world. He's also no spring chicken.
We're recording over online now, so the marvels of modern day technology, it makes the world a lot smaller.
It does, and it's only an hour away, Steve.
I reckon one of us, and maybe Eddie, because he's doing bugger else all, so I reckon Eddie, one of us should get a job at Grappa, and just as someone who takes the the placings for going to Grappa, and then we can get the inside word, because if Wayne Bennett goes to Grappa and one of the journos is there, then he's our man. We know for sure.
Yeah, I reckon Gary would do it because he would blend in the best. He wouldn't be able to
I like that one, Declan.
Yeah,
and aside from that, how you know that Wayne Bennett's coming to be the head of football at West Tigers, we'll appoint him as head of pathways. In 3 months, you'll have 3 different business cards. Okay, let's wait and see what happens in regards to that. Let's have a quick look at the roster. Not a lot's changed. Still at 30 players, so no room to move at the moment. A few little rumours and things going on, but nothing too concrete. Charlie Staines is still on the teams page on the West Tigers website, so it looks like Charlie's still involved in the club. There are some rumours around that he's still not right from that surgery that he had. A lot of people on the socials asking questions about Charlie Staines. As far as I know, I don't have any concrete info. Gary's got his hand up.
Yeah, the odd thing for me with Charlie Staines, something mustn't be quite right, because I would have thought a team somewhere would have picked him up by now. The fact that he's off contract for next season and no club has signed him so far, that's quite perplexing to me. So I'm probably of the opinion that most people are, that something with that injury isn't quite right yet, and he needs a little bit more time. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him show up on a train and trial contract. Hopefully for us, but even at another club, because there's obviously people are holding off and seem to be waiting on him a little bit. So I find that quite interesting.
Yeah, there seems to be something going on. He's only a young man, and you'd think he'd need to have a contract somewhere for sure. The Justin Oldham rumour won't go away. Benji didn't say no. He didn't seem to shoot it down. But you'd think there's going to have to be some movement on that shortly, given that pre-season training is ramping up and the more experienced players are coming back. But again, nothing more concrete on that. I know that Gary's big time in favour of that move. He really wants to see that happen as soon as possible.
I'm a massive Oldham fan. I thought he was a fantastic footballer, but the key word in that sentence is was. I think he's at the point in his career that he's not going to get any better. And he has a long-term contract. The contract he has with the Melbourne Storm isn't a 1-year contract. It isn't a 2-year contract. It's a 3-year contract that we would be meeting. And I would take him for next year in a heartbeat, but I can't take him for 3 years with the form that he showed in the last 12 months.
All right, Declan, I'm going to say a football player's name. He's actually got 3 names in his full name, and I want to see on your face how excited you'd be to have this guy at the club. Aiden Fanua-Blake.
Oh, yeah, who wouldn't want Adam Fanua-Blake at the club? He's legitimately a world-class player, and he's that apex predator that Steve has always dreamed about on the pod. And yeah, like obviously, I think every single NRL club will be looking to sign him. Whether the Tigers can do it or not, who knows? But like Scott Fulton, worked at Manly. He worked at Manly there, so there's a connection, and hopefully we can offer something up to the Warriors, because you would imagine they would want some sort of trade or some sort of player back in return. But yeah, I feel like the Dragons, though, I can see them getting quite desperate. Flanagan coming in, wanting to make a big signing. They've got plenty of salary cap room, but I'll definitely be interested in them. I think we need that kind of quality in our team.
And you kind of foreshadowed my question for you, Declan. Who would you be willing to kind of offer up to get him across here?
Be a few players, like honestly. I feel like
yeah, they can take half the squad. Yeah. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, who can't they take? I feel like is probably the more optimal question. But yeah, like there wouldn't be many guys that you would be like, nah, sorry, like you can't have him. Maybe some of the even the younger players you'd be a little bit hard pressed to say no to. But yeah, I'd be very open to maybe someone like, I would even throw in someone like Papali'i, because there's rumours that he wanted like to go back to New Zealand for a while. This makes sense. Like he's a quality player, so you would imagine the Warriors wouldn't feel particularly hard done by, because he's a New Zealand rep player. He's a great player in his own right. So it kind of solves like 2 different problems, and then it frees up that spot for Sean Blower to go on an edge with him. And we still have John Bateman, and then we still have guys like Lachlan Galvin, Brendan Mansfield, and Samuel Afinu. So we've got plenty of back row options. I feel like we could cover for the loss of someone like that, and then we get a world class prop in return. So I definitely wouldn't say no to that move.
Yeah, I think that's the most logical choice. I'm not sure whether his partner still lives in New Zealand, but she's a New Zealand netballer, I believe. So I think that's the most logical choice. I think it does weaken us in the back row, but it gets us that exact type player that we've been missing for a long time in our forward pack. And there's not many people that I would let Ice go for, but that one I'm doing pretty quickly as well.
I'll hit the tennis ball straight back over the net to you, Gary. Would you swap your man Stefano for him?
That's a really hard one. I would have to think long and hard about it. I am a fan of Steph. I know some people thought he was fairly poor last year. I think most people rate him fairly hard. He's still a young prop. I think a lot of people are expecting him to be that Payne Haas type guy who damages the defensive line, and I just don't think he's that type of player. And that's the biggest problem with our forward pack, is we don't have that type of player. But I think it's putting a little bit too much on Steph to be that player. He's still a young guy. I think he's still a really quality front rower, and I'll be very reluctant to let him go for anyone.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between improving your squad and building your squad. You know, if say we did that trade and let Stefano go for Fennell Blake, then yeah, okay, we probably do improve our squad because he's got more experience and he's absolutely what we've all crying out for. We say we need, but I don't think we're building our squad by doing that. You know, Stefano is part of our future. And yeah, we want Fennell Blake, but we don't want to be letting go someone like Stefano to get Fennell Blake in because we're not building. You know, we might be improving on the short term, but we're not really building that squad. And I think that's our focus has got to be on building.
Yeah, I think as well. Like, how much would you pay someone like Adam Fennell Blake? Because he's 27 right now. Like, he's one of those like really big, athletic types of middles. So you'd imagine that might decrease a little bit with age. But how much would you pay him, Gary, to get him over the line?
Packet of chips and a can of Coke. I think he's going to demand a big salary wherever he goes. He's one who's probably hard to put a number on because that age does worry me a bit. But he's a guy who's going to be pushing that $800,000 at least quite easily, especially with the amount of clubs that are going to be in the market for him. And with us, I think if we're going to get someone across like that, then we're probably going to be paying overs. And I think our best chance to get him, if we really wanted him to come across, would be to organise a trade for next season, because I think we're in a position where with us, we could probably make a trade happen. And I think that would be our better chance, because I think by all reports, the Warriors are happy to let him go for 2025. I think we are in a position where we could probably make something happen now. And maybe that also helps you get him a little bit cheaper, because you're not competing against the St. George's and the Bulldogs and the Roosters and everyone else who's going to come calling once it's really well known that he's available for 2025.
I mean, I think Zero Taco has a salary at $1 million for the Warriors up until 2026. So I feel like you would have to... I know the Dragons are definitely going to throw like at least $1 million at him. So we would realistically probably have to match that. And he's also 28. He just turned 28 a few days ago as well. So he's not 27. So
that's hard for me. I still remember the days where Wayne Bennett came out and you don't pay $300,000-$400,000 for a prop, and I think that still carries some weight. $1 million is a lot of money. When you have a look, a lot of the rumours around is Jerome Luai, a half who has won 3 premierships, and that's around the range they're talking for him. So that $1 million for a prop, unless you're signing Payne Haas, I find it really difficult to be going to that $1 million mark for a prop forward. Though he would transform our forward pack immediately and adds the key element that is missing.
I'd make the point that I don't think we're a top 8 chance next year as we stand. But if you put him in, I reckon there is that slight chance of a 7th or an 8th spot, Steve.
Yeah, I was just going to say I think that the game keeps evolving, and I think that comment from Wayne Bennett is pertinent and accurate when he said it. I think as we come season after season after season, the way the game is progressing at the moment, that front row is just so important now, and probably more important than it's ever been in the history of the game that I can remember. And maybe these guys are going to come on that sort of money, and a player is worth what's needed at your club, and we need that type of player. And I'd go that million, I reckon.
Yeah, mate. If we sign him, I think he transforms our club. But yeah, I still find it hard to go that high, especially that Jerome Luai figure of around $1 million. I think I'd probably be looking to spend that $1 million there. Maybe, I don't know.
Well, let's start to Declan, because I've got Jerome Luai on my list of things to talk about. The club, Benji saying we'll give Jaden Sullivan, or Bud Sullivan, as he wants to be known, him and Latu Fainu a chance before looking at Jerome Luai, which is an interesting situation to be in, isn't it? Because they are such unknowns. We just don't know what that combination is going to be like. We don't know if this is going to be a combination that's going to be able to provide us with success. Luai, as a prospect for you, Declan, is he the player that transforms this club? I'm not so sure.
I'm actually quite bullish on Jerome Luai. The more I think about it, the more I do like it. I think that he's just on Benji Marshall's point about Jaden Sullivan and Ladu Fainu. I think history has just shown us time and time again that you need that senior half to kind of bring through a younger player, and the chances of Sullivan and Fainu both being regular NRL players that play 200 plus games is quite slim. So I do think there is that need for a senior half, and obviously agencies is probably not going to be the club. And I just really do like the look of Jerome Luai. Yes, he's got a completely different role at Penrith as to what we would need him to do. So that's a big unknown. Just because he doesn't do it at Penrith doesn't mean he can't be that kind of main playmaker. I think we've talked about the World Cup for Samoa, and he was kind of that dominant playmaker, and he got them to a final. So he's shown that he can play well without Cleary. And if you just take away his skill set, what I really like about him is that he's got just enough of that ego to kind of drag everyone else up with him with the standards. Because I just remember when he was yelling at Jaden Salmon after Penrith lost a game, and he was just absolutely spraying him for getting his lines wrong. And I just think we need someone like that to lift the standards, someone who has the pedigree. He's a Polynesian player, and we have a lot of Polynesian players in our team, so I think they'll all look up to him. I think I can see him and Benji being quite similar in the way that they look at the game as well. So I think it's a great matchup from that. We've got Api Coruscant. We could all see how big a difference one Penrith player made last season. If you have another one as well, I can really see that improving our team. And I just like the fit for us. And I think if he could be the circuit breaker. And I think he's kind of got the attitude and a little bit of that ego to take a club like us and turn us into a relevant team again.
Yeah, I don't know, Declan. I reckon you had the same amount of enthusiasm you just showed there for another 5'8", whose spot Luai possibly would be taking if he came. But that's not what I wanted to ask. What I wanted to ask was, based on what Joel just said about Fanua Blake coming, that could be the only chance we've got to make in the 8. If by some miracle both Luai and Fanua Blake were available at the same time, and we had the money for one of them and not both of them with our current squad, who would you guys take?
I would take Luai in a heartbeat, because we just need halves. We all saw last season, it just the team. How many weeks in a row did we say the actual team didn't play badly? We got the forwards did their job, the outside backs did their job, but when we got into the opposition 20, we just couldn't score. And I just think we're missing that conductor. And Api Coruscant even said it in an interview. He said that Tim Sheens wanted to play that expansive style football, but they just didn't have that link player to connect it all together, so it all kind of fell apart. And I think someone like Luai is that kind of player who can just gel everything together.
I've thought about this one a lot. I've thought about signing Luai a fair bit over the last month or so, and a lot of it comes from me having a bit of an opinion of him that he rubs me the wrong way. The attitude and a lot of his comments rubs me the wrong way. But I've thought about it a lot. And to me, if we were going to go after him, it would have to be to play halfback. It wouldn't be to be playing 5'8". If we're going after him to play halfback. Now, the decision that the club and Benji Marshall in particular need to make is whether he has the skill set to transition to that halfback role. Some players have done it in the past. Some players have tried it and failed. I think he may do. I think what he showed with Samoa suggests that he may have that skill set that he can kind of make that transition. But the really interesting part for me is he's won 3 premierships, but he's been sitting in the shadow of Nathan Cleary that entire time. And for someone with the ego and the will to win and the desire that he seems to have, I think if he did make the move, that ego could actually be quite a benefit to a club like us, similar to what Declan said, in the fact that I think if he moves, he's moving not to just cash in and make some money. I'm sure he wants to do that as well because he's got his 3 premierships. But to be to prove that he's not just Nathan Cleary's wingman, that he's not reliant on Nathan Cleary to do his role, that he can go out and he can be his own man and he can take a team and he can be the person that controls that team and dominates that team and makes that team successful. Because he's won 3 premierships now, and I know there was some criticism of his game in the grand final, but he was quite instrumental in the previous 2 premierships. He's played in 4 grand finals. This is a guy who's used to winning, he's used to success, and when you have the ego that he quite obviously has, you want to take that success wherever you go. And I can see, just like Declan can, and Declan and I don't agree too often, especially around halves, but I can see this move being one that could quite possibly work. It could also just blow up and totally send us off in the wrong direction, but I think that his attitude and his desire to prove and step out of that shadow, I think could be the making for a club like the West Tigers.
One of the catchphrases that Gary's patented is 2 things can be right at the same time, or yeah. I mean, the thing is that just because, and I'm going to take you up to task a bit, Declan, just because we had lousy halves in 2023, it doesn't mean that we weren't still also missing up front. Like, I think we're serially missing impact up front. And, I mean, I think it's more of a reflection on Brandon Wakeham and Luke Brooks and Adam Dewey and Will Smith. Maybe, that's how dire we were in those areas. That doesn't mean that we also didn't. If you throw a James Fisher Harris into the West Tigers team, we're a significantly better team, no matter who the halves are, is what I'm saying. So I wouldn't be opening the checkbook for Jerome Luai myself. Just personally, I think we've got so much work to do up front. Yes.
I think the thing I would say about that is it's a lot more easy to find quality for value in front rows and middles than it is for halves, because there's so many good forwards that like do come up in the market every now and again, and then you can develop them as well. But how many good quality halves are available in the market at the moment, and how many are going to come to the West Tigers as well? I mean, I think the only reason we're even having this conversation about Jerome Luai is one that Penrith have only offered him a 2-year deal, and we're probably going to offer him like 4 or 5 years. So that's we have to kind of go above and beyond for someone like Jerome Luai, because the market for halves just isn't great. And we do have some good young halves, but good young halves take so long to develop, and we just have to somehow find a senior playmaker. But I do think that, good props, someone like David Clemmer just kind of popped out, and we just took our opportunities with him. I do think that we can find value in our middles through another way, but I'm just not too sure how we're going to get that in the halves if Jayden Sullivan and Latu Fano don't both work out at the same time.
There is no doubt, in my opinion, that our forward pack was unbalanced last year and is still unbalanced going into next season. I don't think that's a question that's up for debate. But that forward pack we had performed quite well in the vast majority of the season last year. I thought it died away towards the end of the season, but they were getting up the field. They were getting the side into position to score points. And you have a look at our stats in the red zone, and to me, it's quite clear our biggest area of concern last year, our biggest hindrance last year, was our inability to create points in the red zone. Our red zone attack was the worst in the comp. For a large percentage of the season, maybe even all the season, I haven't checked, we were leading the tackle count in the 20-metre zone just because we couldn't score points. We'd get down there and we'd be stuck there and would shift the ball side to side, and there was just no chance. Some games we never looked like scoring a point. And that, to me, comes back to our halves, and that was our biggest weakness. That's the area I think we need to fix. I do think in Sullivan especially, I think he's going to create more points than the halves we had last year did, quite simply. But Jerome Luai takes that to another level again. And that's not me sitting here saying we don't need an impact prop. We definitely need that impact prop. Our forward pack is unbalanced. But our biggest problem last year was our halves, not that lack of that impact, that A-type predator, as Steve likes to put it forward. Our biggest problem last year was our inability to convert field position into points.
Moving on from that discussion, I think that you guys would have, when you've seen me, you'd probably get a pretty good idea that I'm not really a fashion plate. I don't know very much about colour coordination or fashion or labels or anything like that. But Declan, like, I may not know much about fashion, but I know Luke Brooks looked fantastic in that medley. How good was that?
I would like to plead my Fifth Amendment right, please, to not incriminate myself. But yeah, it did feel weird. He looked like he looked fit, to be fair to him. Looks like he's kept in shape in the off season, and good luck at Manly. All I'm going to say.
All right, let's have Luke, a look at the draw.
Who are you talking about, Joel?
With Josh Alloway. The draw, round 1. West Tigers are going to get 2 points. You're up against the bye. A good call. I mean, personally, I'd rather have the bye 5 or 6 weeks in. Is that how you guys feel about that? Are you happy to have the bye straight up, Steve? Do you think there's any advantage in that for us?
Not really, apart from the fact that we're on 2 points after round 1, which might be good for your mindset. That's about it. But you need the bye. You need the bye strategically through the season when you start to get busted. And we've got one right at the beginning. We've got one right at the end of the season as well. So I think we've lucked out in that regard. And it's really hard, It's really. I remember thinking beginning of this last season when St George didn't play. It's like St George don't exist, right? Like they're so far from your mind because they're not involved in that first week.
That's why Eddie's so happy.
But I just think you do your preseason games, your trials, and you sort of gear that to have them one weekend, which is actually 2 weeks. And then you play, right? So we're going to play our last trial, and in effect, then we've got 3 weeks before we play, which is so. No, I think it's like someone's got to do it, and it's our turn, right? But it's not ideal.
Yeah, I really don't like it. So I as I said earlier, I'll be watching us play this weekend. I can't wait for the football season to start. And the issue I have is, we have the bye, so we're not playing round 1. But round 1 goes over 2 weeks this year, so we're not playing until the 3rd week of the competition. So we've got the 4 clubs going to Vegas for the opening weekend, which there's only 2 games, but those 2 games are on. Then we have the rest of round 1 in the 2nd week, and we're not playing. And it's not till we get to round 2, which is in the 3rd week, that we actually get a game. So to me, that's just going to be a long, excruciating wait for the Tigers to play. And I think the point Steve raised about our second bye being in the second last week of the competition, I think it's round 26, our second bye.
And round 13 and round 26.
Yeah, there's 3 byes, so round 13 and then round 26. The only one that's of any benefit to us, really, is that round 13. I'd rather have our byes when you got a few players with some niggles, to give mentally, it's a very long season. It's a 27-week season. I think mentally having some byes in a slightly better time frame than that allows your players to mentally refresh as well. And our players just don't get that with the way the byes are set up. We've pretty much we start a week later, and then we have our 3rd bye a week before the last game. So, and in all likelihood, if we're really serious, it will be the week before our last game of the season as well. So I just think our byes are a little bit wasted this year with where they're positioned.
Declan, a lot of obviously a lot of marketing, a lot of talk around going back to Leichhardt, going back to Campbelltown, but how could there not be one Sunday afternoon game at Leichhardt? That seems bizarre.
At the risk of copping a little bit of hate, I'm actually not too sad about it, because I would rather lose on the Saturday and then have the Sunday to recover than lose on the Sunday and just be really depressed waking up on the Monday. But that's just me. I think Eddie kind of agreed with me. I think his quote was, he likes Saturday games so he could drink. So, I think that's a valuable bit of customer insight. But yeah, I don't really mind. I actually don't mind going to Leichhardt on like a Saturday or a Friday night. I think it's a good vibe even then, so it doesn't really bother me too much.
I think Leichhardt's awesome no matter when the game is. But I reckon there's a more serious point around that, Joel, about the Sunday afternoon games. And because for a long time, even though when we were playing terribly, or are playing terribly, we still seem to get our fair share, if not more, of Friday night 8 o'clock and Sunday Arvo 4 o'clock, which are the big ratings ones for Channel 9. And Channel 9, as far as I'm aware, free-to-air still rates a much bigger audience than Fox does, just because more people have access to free-to-air. And so for us to be on the nose a little bit with Channel 9 for the first time ever that I can remember is an indication that we are losing a lot of goodwill that we've held for a very long time. And I know there's a bit of talk on that on the socials at the moment about that. And we talked about this last year, and just like like a warning type mentality of saying, if we're not careful, we are going to lose what we've got, and this might be the beginning of seeing it. We've already said that the next generation of kids are not going to follow West Tigers unless we start winning pretty soon. Well, now we're not as palatable to the broadcasters, and that is a real concern, I reckon.
Because it takes a long time to get back as well. You have a look at clubs that are unpopular with Channel 9. Even when they start winning, it doesn't seem to turn around very quickly either. So I think it's something like there may only be 3 Sunday games that we have next season, and that's a real concern for a club that, especially even when we weren't getting the Friday night games, that second time slot for Channel 9 of the Sunday games, we've been so popular in that for a long, long time. I have to agree with you, Steve. I think it's a sign that the smell is starting to get up the nostrils of the broadcasters and the wider rugby league community, I think. So it's time to fix this club and make the changes we need to start becoming successful.
Yeah, I mean, and to be fair, you can't question Channel 9. We've won 2 spoons in a row, so you can understand the logic of it.
And what is it? Six games in 2 years or something we've won? Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's exactly. I think that's exactly right. Yeah. No, we won 4 last year and 4 the year before, I think.
Okay, 8.
Yes, get it right, Gary. It's very important. I've got my eyes on round 27. I've got my complete Optimus hat. I've found it. I've gone into the cupboard, pulled it out. The Eels at Campbelltown on a Friday evening, round 27. Can you imagine if both of those teams were still in the hunt for that, a 7th or 8th position in that big game? That would be pretty awesome, Declan.
Yeah, I mean, I think we talk about having a really, really young squad, but I was doing my 1-17, and it's actually the 1-17 could potentially be quite senior. I think it's when we start getting injuries, that's when the inexperience kind of comes in, and I think that's where that could bite us on the bum. But I think if we can hold a relatively healthy team, I think we could still be, and everything goes right. Obviously, I don't think it's beyond the question that we could be chasing for the top 8 if everything goes to plan and we avoid injuries and manage to keep our starting halves on the field for more than 50% of the games.
There's a lot of ifs in there.
A lot of ifs, yeah.
Now, just to go back in time a little bit, Eddie is going to have a little bit of a contribution onto this pod tonight. He has just messaged me through, or us through, that Charlie Staines is no longer at the club. So
okay.
It looks like something may have happened in regards to that, though I am trusting Eddie Otto to provide that information. So hopefully he's correct.
Well, that's interesting, Gary, because I saw it, and I didn't mention it because I couldn't remember where I saw it, but I saw our squad as 29, listed as 29 with him not in it. So I don't know how accurate that is, but that's what I saw.
He already wasn't. He didn't have a contract for next season. Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, that mightn't have been accurate then.
Yeah. So it's 31 minus 1, Steve. So that's 30. Yeah.
Fair enough.
We're going to keep our eyes aiming over at Ashfield and at Concord for news in regards to this review. And as soon as something does drop, we will get back on. We won't be disappearing again for another 4 months or something. How long has it been since we did the last one? It feels like about that. But we're back in action. So
it's been a nice break. I haven't had to chat to Steve as much.
That's true, exactly. And we'll send out the SOS for Eddie. You are welcome to come on, Eddie, even though you're on that one-man boycott for some reason. And
if anyone's interested, Joel, I think there is a World Cup semi-final party at Declan's house tomorrow night, starting at 7 o'clock. So everyone's invited.
Steve's going to have to tell me who's played before so I can organise the food and everything.
Who is playing?
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.